Welcome to Derech Eretz with me, your host, Romy Stach. As part of a global community, we are often bombarded with an array of choices and opportunities. This means we live not only in the marketplace of ideas, but also the marketplace of identities. This can be daunting, and Rabbi David Weinberg helps us to unpack how one could approach today's theme of creating opportunities.
If you're a man of faith, does success completely depend on God? And if so, if you believe that, all articles of faith, where is there room for your own initiative? Do you have the ability to create your own opportunities? Judaism lives with a fascinating paradox. A belief in a singular God force which encompasses everything and every facet of life and existence. And yet, the firm belief that we are partners with the Almighty. On the one hand, we believe in Beshert. We believe that there are things decided, ordained by God. Call it the big picture, the general direction of history. Our life story is somewhat decided and ordained by Hashem, by the Almighty. But on the other hand, we also believe in the power of individual choice. We believe that our choices matter, that the efforts we make can and will bear fruit. God succinctly puts this into context when he gives us two opposing or contradictory instructions. It's in the Ten Commandments. It's based on the story of creation. 6 days a week, thou shalt work. But on the seventh, you should desist from work. You should rest. 6 days, we reflect God's activity in creation. For 6 days, we get involved. We are instructed to go out there and make it happen. But then we are told that every seventh day, we have to stay away from work. We have to actually move into a space not of doing, not of active participation, but of being. Whereas a whole week, we are almost inhaling activity, creativity. On Shabbat, we mirror God, as it says, Vayinafash. God rested and he exhaled. And so while we are told to make it happen for 6 days, we are reminded on the seventh day, we are meant to desist from trying to make it happen, because on the seventh day, we reflect on God's involvement. We are reminded that as much as God wants us to be active, he actually reminds us that he is the one running the show. He is the one ultimately deciding things. And if you think about it, as much effort, as much activity, as much as creativity you can put in, you will never know where success will come. With all the success books, with all the success sections in bookstores overloaded with material, we cannot predict success. Talk to any successful individual, a sports person, a business person. You'll find that they have lucky elements, a lucky shirt, a lucky number, because they know that despite all their efforts, they never could have predicted where success would have come. We call that God's blessing. God wants us to invest ourselves, our creativity, our time and our effort for 6 days to put what we have into the effort to make things happen. But on the seventh, we remember that while we have to do our best, we also have to let God do the rest. It is a beautiful teaching in ethics of our fathers. Lo alecha hamalacha ligmor. It is not for you to finish your job. V'lo ata ben chorin lehibatel mimena. But neither are you free to desist from it. Being a person of faith means believing that we have to begin the process. We have to put in our efforts, but we have to remember that ultimately we look up to God to reward our efforts, to bless them, and to ultimately allow each one of those efforts to bear fruit. In the agricultural world, they would say, you can plant the seeds, but you can never make it rain. one of the most humbling elements is knowing that we have to put in everything we can, but it is not our job to finish. That is for God. Do your best and let God do the rest.
Derech Eretz. Derech Eretz.
Lawrenceville in Johannesburg was once a hub of Jewish life. Today, it is once again redefining the Johannesburg inner city landscape. Victoria Yards presents a uniquely integrated urban complex that is as much about social development as it is about commercial enterprise, through building an ecosystem where tenants thrive as a community.
Victoria Yards is in Bertram's Valley, in the Bezuidenhout Valley, and it's actually an area which has often been an immigrants area. So originally, the Jewish community came here early on in the early 90s, all the way up to the Second World War. So the structure originally was the laundromat for the mines. The spring where the Yxga River starts is right by Ellis Park, which is very close to where we are. And so this was the closest water source to town. Victoria Yards is a makerspace. It's a place which houses some of South Africa's best artisans, best painters, best furniture makers. It's really a springboard for them. It spans 30,000 square meters, 18 buildings. It crosses the Yxga River, and it goes from here all the way to Mozambique to Shai.
When we got here, a lot of the walls had been stripped of plaster. There were gaping holes where windows used to be. Some of the roofs were off. It was just a mess. So I looked at this and I kind of really liked the brickwork, but it needed a little bit of ship-shaping and kind of making as if, we had kind of given it a bit of lipstick or a bit of attention. And the first thoughts that came to me were food security and artisans and artisanal workshops to kind of fill that gap in the South African education system where they've kind of cut out vocational training, woodwork, carpentry and steel work and whatever.
The community which surrounds us is a relatively poor community. They needed jobs and they needed training. So if we were able to offer them that springboard of coming here to train and get a job, the kind of concept was to do like an inside-out property development, right? And if we could impact the lives of our neighbours in a positive way, we as the property developers of the space would be able to really create positive change from a social perspective and from a financial perspective.
It's just the rawness, the dilapidated buildings and the exposed brick, and it's got this grungy industrial look to it, which really, really appeals to my aesthetic personally. And also the fact that it's a hub for creatives, not like people who are making things, people who are were artists, people who've decided to make a living off of their aesthetic and their talents. So it's just like a hub of people who we all get each other, at that creative level.
We are a bit of a mom and pop shop. My husband is a man with a plan. I'm the creative, crazy person, and throughout the years we've kind of created our own designs, specifically in lighting. Lots of people love them, absolutely fawned over them, and we decided that that would actually be a really, really good way to start a business. We're also quite conscious around recycling and upcycling. It's a big passion of ours. So anything that we can actually transform that's either had a life before it's come to us or anything that can be repurposed to try and obviously reduce carbon footprint is something that we're quite passionate about. And we just love the ethos and the philosophy behind what Victoria Yards represented.
The relationship between the people inside the yards and outside of the yards, there's a lovely crossover. There's a natural crossover because we've opened our doors up and we've tried to employ as many people from the area as we can. We've got involved in social activities that include people from the outside. So what we are trying to do is turn this into a cohesive valley, a community, a real community. And we have this fantastic operation working out of Victoria Yards that we actually donated the space to Victoria Yards Commons or VY Commons, and they run a number of initiatives One of them being the Makers Valley, where they've pulled all the entrepreneurs and all the makers and people in the valley that have got something to offer. They've created a directory. They've got forums together where people communicate and discuss all kinds of things, where they put kind of 10 artists together. They go to the Skills Village, and those 10 artists will discuss their art and work together and share information, swap information. And then you'll have metal workers going in there, or trash collectors, and they're all trying to help each other to kind of make stuff happen, which I've never experienced before. But there seems to be an extraordinary kind of ecosystem in the valley where people are really starting to do stuff like I've never seen before in this country.
And a lot of the guys that come here are facing the same problems as their neighbors. So you're getting a lot of creative people in here that might not necessarily have business skills, but when they go to their neighbor and they say, you know, how do you do something as simple as raise equity or raise debt? What do? I don't want to fall into a pitfall. There's 50 people for that guy to ask, and they're all working in this together. They all understand it. It's really a family. It's a community.
There's a lot of artists. There's a lot of creators in the space. So it makes you as a creator, or as an artist, or whatever you are. It forces you to think creatively. It forces you to break boundaries, and that's the most beautiful thing. And above everything else, people here, we are a community. Everything that's in here, like the crown that we got, is from Ayanda Mabulu, who's one of the community members, Sarah Cronin, who actually made our rails, Norris, the woodwork guy who made our counter, Joe, who made our steelwork. So everybody around here, it's more of a community. We interchange. Money rotates here first before it goes out. So for me, it's a blessing, and it has actually kind of helped the business grow from one strength to another.
So the sense of community and bringing a community together doesn't happen naturally. It happens with a lot of activations, and it happens with a lot of input from somebody or something, and they're being pushed by the VY Commons, and they're being pushed by Skills Village and Colored Cube. So things start to kind of add up and accumulate and they gather steam, and the community starts realizing that there's something on the go. And as that happens, it kind of picks up more momentum, and I think that eventually this Bez Valley is going to be a shining example of what can come from being a cohesive, bonded community.
Brian's one of Joburg's treasures, and the work that he's done and impact that he's had on the creative side of South Africa, and making the creative thoughts and the ideas of people into spaces. I don't think anyone's actually managed to do that, even close to what Brian's done. And he's a guy that he gets his hands dirty. You get a lot of people that speak a lot and that lecture and that talk. Brian will literally take off his shoes. Maybe he'll leave his shoes on and he'll get in the mud, and he'll build the wall himself. You
can't be rational or logical when you're doing a project like this. You have to drive it from your passions and your heart. And there has to be a little bit of kind of stability and kind of good sense in what you decide. But this is a passion project. I mean, you're not going to get away from it. It's not, we're not administrators, we're not bureaucrats. We are people with a passion that want to put a project together that really sings. And, you can't go to school to learn how to do this job.
Wow, what I can say about John T, he's a very smart chap. He's a very brilliant guy, people's person. I think when I first met him, he introduced me to a whole lot of his friends who bought into the brand, who loved the brand, who've been buying the product. And above everything else, he's the first person who's like, Seppo, you need to see this place. I think it's gonna work well for your brand. He's a people's person, he's a community member, and he believes in other people, he believes in art, he's a believer, and it's seldom that you find people who believe and also put in their money on top of it, who will not just believe by saying, but believe and also purchase an item, not one or two, but plenty for him and his friends and his family. So for me, a person like him, they come once in a blue moon. He's amazing.
So to me, I think the Derech Eretz of Victoria Yards is the fact that we're purpose-driven, that it's a space which cares about the why more than the what, and that we care about the people that we're doing it with. And the minute you look at those as your factors, as your driving factors, you worry about other people, you worry about how they feel, you worry about like why are you doing this, the first principles, why are you here today in doing it, it really changes your mindset on any kind of business activity or endeavor.
Our expectations around work and the importance it has in our lives are changing. For many, and not just millennials, there is the expectation that one will enjoy and find meaning in the work one does. The team of Staffwise, a Jewish-initiated and run career and recruitment organization, reflect on the impact of the Fourth Industrial Revolution and the future of work prospects.
So the Fourth Industrial Revolution is the buzzword today, but most people don't even know what it is. We had 3 revolutions before that. The first one was the revolution of steam turning water into engine power. The second revolution was the revolution of industrialization. That's when we started manufacturing and factories, and all of that came about. The third revolution started in the 70s, and that was the introduction of technology. And often that revolution is confused with the Fourth Industrial Revolution, but it's not. The Fourth Industrial Revolution is about data. It's the revolution that introduced data as the currency of the future. Data has disrupted the way we live, learn, and earn, and has changed the landscape of everything we do. And it also really disrupted the world of work and the world of recruitment. And that's why at Staffwise we are so obsessed about the Fourth Industrial Revolution, because it changed. It changed the way people approached careers. It's changed the way people are being employed. It's changed the way people stay at the workplace and develop at the workplace. It has changed the land of unemployment.
The starting point for anyone looking for work, whether it's someone who's employed looking to move or someone who is unemployed looking for a job, is actually looking at oneself. What am I good at? What is important to me? And how am I going to apply those aspects into my next opportunity? And it is not an easy process to do, but it's a very useful, very effective process, and it can be very constructive in terms of finding the right opportunity.
One of the key things that I try and do initially is really to try and make them feel comfortable in the environment, and that they are open to talk about their situation in a confidential and unjudgmental environment. And it's important that they can get that off their chest. And I always say, like, get it off your chest here rather than in employment or a real interview situation, because this is your opportunity. If you're going for a job interview, we need to build confidence.
People now are not interested anymore in the 9-to-5 kind of work environment. The generation today saw their parents dedicating and sacrificing their life to employers and still end up not being able to retire or end up with loads of health problems. And the new workforce, they want a new way of work. They want work which is meaningful. They want work which is not forcing them to sacrifice their life. They're looking for a new way of work-life balance. And work-life balance has been a buzz for the last 10 years, but no one really understood what it meant until this disruption has come to the fore and has showed us a new way of doing things at work.
There are people who do create opportunities for themselves. I mean, the millennials are also a little bit like that. They've gone out there, they create opportunities, and I think that the fact that you don't have to work in an office from 9 to 5, even in your own city, has allowed people to create those opportunities.
When someone hasn't worked before and has come straight out of university or school, the question one needs to ask oneself is, what's going to set them apart from someone in a similar situation? So it's about trying to find opportunities to learn skills and get exposure that would be beneficial in a work environment. But a very valuable way to do it is also through volunteering. So you could either volunteer in an organization or a business that one has identified as aspirational, so one would like to ultimately be working in that sort of environment, and often volunteering could also be a great way into an organization.
All the workforce who is looking to attract younger blood into their environment, they also need to understand that things have changed. And most people have to change their careers every 5 years. Because in order to remain competitive in the workforce today, you have to continue to learn, to grow, to evolve, to develop. You can't stay static. So today, a director of an organization has to be able to do graphic design, have to be able to understand social media, have to be able to speak the data language. They can't just be able to manage. And that has a huge effect on your CV.
When putting together a CV, it's less about the traditional CVs that we might have used 10, 15 years ago. What we would recommend for someone who's putting together a CV is to look at, on the one hand, their skills that they've developed through their career. And those skills, again, that can be transferred into different environments. And on the other hand, highlighting maybe notable achievements that they've had during the space of their career that demonstrate those transferable skills.
A key part of the process is whether or not the person is work ready. Are they ready to go into the workplace? And that's one aspect that we do get involved with, trying to assess whether or not this person is ready for work. Are they looking for full-time work? Are they ready for full-time work? Is part-time work going to be more suitable, especially in the space of vulnerable people? And if we can really unpack what their skill set is and understand how they can add value to a potential employer, that's what we need them to know. So part of our conversation with an individual is for them to really understand what their strengths are, what's their value add, because otherwise they're going to these jobs that they think that they're ready for, and it sets themselves up for disappointment or failure. So we want them to be successful.
There's a very big difference between living to work and working to live. And in a sense, you want to find an opportunity or an environment that marries the two. Yes, people do need to work. You know, very few people have the luxury not to work. However, it is important that when you're working, you are doing what fulfills you and what makes you happy. And we spend so much time at work that to be doing something that is not fulfilling or that is not does not resonate with us, what's the point? You may as well be, you know, doing something menial. You want to be doing something that actually makes a contribution.
At Staffwise, we believe that the Derech Eretz for employment and unemployment is to remember whether you are an employer or a job seeker, you have to treat careers with dignity and with hope. You need to offer people continuity and connectivity and approach the job and the employment process in a professional way.
Anne Frank wrote, "Our lives are fashioned by our choices. First, we make our choices, then our choices make us." If you have missed any of our previous shows, why not click onto our YouTube channel, Derech Eretz Connect, and watch some of our amazing stories. From me, Romy Stach, and the Derech Eretz team, remember that adversity often produces the greatest opportunities in life.